It is election day in America for quite a few states. Right now, polls are open in Georgia, Alabama, Pennsylvania, and Kentucky, a race with huge stakes and major amounts of money poured into it. President Trump has been putting in the work to unseat Republican incumbent Thomas Massie. The congressman has clashed with Trump White House over several key issues and pushed for the release of the Epstein files. We have reporters on the ground following these key races today. Jeff Zeleny is in Covington, Kentucky, and Danny Freeman is in Allentown, Pennsylvania. First to you, Jeff. So far, things have been open for a bit here, a couple hours plus. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Hey, Sarah, good morning. Yes, voters here have been voting since 6 a.m. here in northern Kentucky, a steady stream of voters. And certainly we have talked to those who are supporting Thomas Massie. They said that they actually like how he stands up to President Trump. And we've talked to voters who are supporting his opponent, Ed Gallrein, saying that it's time for President Trump to have his own Republican congressman in office. So we will see how this voting goes. But it's really reflective of this very tight race here. President Trump, I'm told by his advisors, has been fixated on this contest. He, of course, has been trying to unseat Thomas Massie for more than a year or so. Well, last night we caught up with the congressman to ask him about the nationalization of this race. This race has been nationalized, as you well know, talking about the revenge tour and the revenge list. Do you think that that's how voters here in Kentucky see this race?
I don't think so. They don't know what happened to Bill Cassidy or to those senators in Indiana. And both of those situations are unique from mine. Bill Cassidy voted to impeach the president. That's something I've never done and I would never do. And his constituents were mad about that, right? I'm still with my constituents. In spite of the billionaire spending millions of dollars to convince them I'm not, I think most of my constituents know that because I've been at this 14 years. I haven't changed at all.
So that, of course, is an interesting point there. Congressman Massie has long been opposed to spending bills. He's long been a bit of a contrarian. The Republican Party has changed dramatically during this time, of course, during the Donald Trump presidency. But this is one of the most, if not the most expensive House primaries ever. More than $30 million spent. I'm on the race here and talking to voters. There's a sense of exhaustion as well. But Sarah, this is one important point to keep in mind. This is a closed primary. That means only Republicans can vote in this primary. We've talked to several Democratic voters here who said they would have liked to have supported Congressman Massie, but he was not on their ballot. So that is something to keep in mind as we go through the day here. Only registered Republicans can vote in this congressional primary, but a very close one that the White House is keeping a very close eye on, Sarah.
Yes, I think you're reporting spot on, especially when people are exhausted. I talked to one Kentucky voter who was like, I just want this to be over at this point, but it will happen today. Thank you so much, Jeff. Let's go now to Danny. Governor Josh Shapiro looking to leave his mark, of course, on Pennsylvania politics with the win today, but he's also trying to, as Donald Trump is, kind of put his finger on the scale, although Trump is doing it for revenge. What are you learning here?
Yeah, that's right, Sarah. There are two real big storylines happening in Pennsylvania today. One is some of these swing districts that really the control of the House of Representatives come November could flow through here. And then the other is Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's influence on all of that. Let me start with why we're in Allentown in this specific district. It's a district you all will become very familiar with, the 7th Congressional District here in Pennsylvania. It is a swingy district. A Republican, Ryan McKenzie, he won it alongside President Donald Trump during his victory just a few years ago. And now Democrats are trying to take it back. And that's really the marquee race on the ballot here, is which Democrat is going to step up and try and unseat this Republican incumbent. The Democrats are Bob Brooks, Ryan Crosswell, Lamont McClure, and Carol Obando DeStern. And the key thing here is that one of those candidates, although it's really a toss-up at this point, one of those candidates has gotten the endorsement of Governor Josh Shapiro. You see plenty of ads here in Pennsylvania as well. Bob Brooks is that candidate. He's a firefighter in this area, and You cannot see an ad without him and also Governor Josh Shapiro. That influence by the popular Democratic governor in the state really is on display here. So those are the two storylines that we're going to be watching if that candidate, Shapiro's chosen candidate, really can end up running up the scoreboard here. But meanwhile, Sarah, when it comes to the voters here, they're really still laser focused on just those issues of affordability. I want you to listen to one voter I spoke with who's a small business owner here in Allentown, and she's thinking about how hard it is for her young staff.
I think when you look at how expensive everything is for them just to even get started, I feel a sense of responsibility to provide not just a great place to work, but a great place to make a living. And that is a real challenge right now, to watch young people want to build a future that they're unsure of.
And does it feel like DC is helping that right now?
No, not at all.
You can hear right there, Sarah, that voter Stephanie. She's out here voting because things are really expensive and hard. I passed by a gas station here in Allentown, $4.89 a gallon. Those are the issues that are really bringing voters out here. But again, keep your eye on the 7th Congressional District in Pennsylvania. It could be incredibly important when it comes to control of the House come November.
A lot is at stake for a lot of people. Thank you to you, Danny Freeman, and also to our Jeff Selny. Appreciate it. In Georgia, a crowded field of Republicans are running for the chance to unseat Democratic incumbent Senator Jon Ossoff. Georgia voters are also casting ballots in the race to replace Republican Governor Brian Kemp. That field includes some really high-profile names: former Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, who is now running on the Democratic ticket, and former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. CNN's Ryan Young is live on the ground in Ackworth, Georgia. Ryan, look, there are seats on Georgia Supreme Court that are also on the ballot today. There is a slew of things to bring out voters. What are you seeing?
Oh, there's a slew of options here for people to talk about. And of course, I felt all that energy from Harry a little early this morning. But so far, you can see Georgia voters are really paying attention to this vote. More than 1 million of them have already cast their ballots already in early voting, that close on Friday. Today, it's been steady at polling locations throughout the state. Just talking to some of the folks who've walked past me, some of them have said, look, they are here because they want to make sure that they see some of the policies they want to see in terms of economics move forward. But this has been a nasty race when you talk about the governor's race. In fact, look at some of the ads that have been hitting the airways over the last 60 days or so.
Creepy Rick Jackson and Big Baby Burt Jones are too busy slinging mud at each other to care about you.
In politics, some makeovers are only skin deep. Meet Rick Jackson. Before the primary, he made a few changes. A new look, a new story.
We're incredibly grateful for his leadership and his friendship and his knowledge. Thank you again, Rick, for all that you do for Georgia.
When you see Bert's new attack ads, remember, he doesn't believe them either.
Yes, Sarah, people across the country may not know this. We have a very popular governor here in the state, and he's actually stepping to the side. Now it's Burt Jones versus Rick Jackson. Those two have been locked in the battle that's really locked up the airways when it comes to commercials. People are sort of out there casting the vote to see who the next governor could be on that Republican side. And then, of course, you talked about the Democratic race in terms of the governor. You have Keisha Lance Bottoms, who in all the polls seems to be leading. Of course, there's a lot of conversation about what's going to happen under her because, of course, whoever doesn't get that 50% vote that they need could have a runoff, which happens next month. I will tell you, though, the people here have been energized about this vote. We've seen a lot of folks show up early in other polling centers, and I've actually talked to a few other reporters. They've seen a steady path of people who are casting their ballots pretty early this morning. It should be interesting to watch throughout the day. Sarah?
Yeah, two things. You hit the nail on the head. Economics is big in people's minds. But when you said that it was dirty, I didn't realize it was actual mudslinging,
Gas
like
prices.
Real mud. I'm like, oh.
Full-fledged mudslinging. And then, of course, on top of that, you have these AI ads that are really got on television and people are watching these. The conversation really has been about who's going to move forward. The president has said that he wants Burt Jones to be the next governor of this state. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out when it gets in this tight political race.
Bill Cassidy in Louisiana lost his primary. He famously voted to convict President Trump in his second impeachment. Thomas Massie now is going up against Gal Ryan here. What do you make of this race? And what does Cassidy's loss, could that mean anything for Massie?
Yeah, look, what is the overarching theme here? And that is Donald Trump may have problems with the center of the electorate in American politics, but among Republicans, he is still king. He is still very, very popular. You mess with Trump, you go in the grinder. I mean, you can see that in his overall approval rating with Republicans, right? It's somewhere 82, 83% on average. That is higher at this point in a second term than either Barack Obama was with Democrats back in 2014, and certainly way higher than George W. Bush was at this point with Republicans back in 2006. I'll note Grindr, by the way, going in the grinder. That's a quote from Good Burger. I love that movie. But what is, what's so important here is what happened in Louisiana. Will that necessarily hold in Kentucky? Maybe, maybe not. But Bill Cassidy's performance on Saturday night, I went back through all the spreadsheets that I possibly could, looking at every single primary that an incumbent senator had since just after World War II, back in 1946. Bill Cassidy's 25% was the weakest performance of any incumbent senator in a primary. Again, I don't think, even if Thomas Massie loses tomorrow, he'll do that poorly, but that shows you, along with Trump's popularity within the Republican ranks, what type of wave that Thomas Massie has to fight against to win tomorrow.
Bill Cassidy's performance was the worst since World War II.
For any incumbent senator of either party.
I think Massie sort of represents what I would call whatever the oppositional energy is left in the Republican Party, meaning people, he feels like he can say no to things. And Trump has been found to be able to primary the people he does not like when you look at what happened with the Republicans in Indiana. Do you think that people who stand up to Trump the way he does so specifically can survive primaries?
Well, we'll find out today. And I think that what most Republicans I talk to are frustrated by is when we had the big, beautiful bill, for example, when we cut taxes on overtime, tips, Social Security, the common sense measures we put into place to secure the border, Thomas Massie voted no. It was the fundamental reason what gave us the opportunity to win in 2024, and he has chosen to go to his own path, and today is decision day.
Has he burned every bridge the way somebody implied
I think
here?
a lot of members see that he is looking out for Thomas Massie, as opposed to what the agenda is for the Republican Party. And today's decision day, we'll have to see what happens. We saw what happened last weekend in Louisiana. We'll have to see what happens tonight in Kentucky.
The biggest weakness that Massie has, along with everyone else that identifies this way in Congress, is that they're libertarians. Libertarians are inherently independent-minded. They support rugged individualism over the rest of the team, and it's not very practical. I think that I really do like, though, the lady that was working in the kitchen who's saying, I'm going to vote however I want. That's so American.
Because there are certain states, New Hampshire, et cetera, places where people are like, we don't want to be bossed around. We thought that about Indiana, and then 5 of the 7 Indiana Republicans that said no to redistricting are out of a job.
Well, and that's why Trump has already won. Even if Thomas Massie actually wins and pulls this out tonight, the message has been sent. You cross the president, there is going to be a huge political cost. And even if you do survive the primary, Thomas Massie is now fighting for his political life just as a result of that. And the message has been sent, and you're going to see Republicans stay in line, at least through the midterms.
It's a very expensive message. This is the most expensive primary in history so far, $35 million as of Monday. There are a lot of donors also from AIPAC, from Republican Jewish Coalition, because of Massie's comments on the war in Iran. And I did wonder, with Hegseth there, with the military base there, is this also a little bit of a proxy for that conversation?
It absolutely is. And $35 million is not even getting past the surface. If you look at what happened in Louisiana with $50 million, if you look in Texas with $150 million, this is what's great for a Democratic strategist, is none of that money was spent beating up Democrats. That was money beating up Republicans, each other, saying why they suck. What about us? And so we like to sit back and watch that just happen.
I'm glad you're weighing in with that.
Wait, let me finish. I'll also say that Donald Trump is still very popular in one little piece of the American electorate, and that is these Republican primaries. To your point, Alex, is like, love him or hate him, I've always given Donald Trump credit for being a good tactician when it comes to politics, but he is very popular in a Democratic primary. And again, boys and girls at home, in a Democratic primary, just a little bit of voters make a decision for the entire congressional district, because most of these guys, Democrat or Republican, are in very safe seats to where those primary voters determine who will be your congressman.
In the meantime, do you think that Pete Hegseth should be campaigning for anyone right now?
Well, it's common things where cabinet members campaign. There's no doubt
Not
about it.
Not defense secretaries during a war.
Well,
unless I miss Rumsfeld hanging out in the midterms.
No, I mean, this is
it.
a reality of politics today. He's out there aggressively pushing for the president's person.
Reality meaning no one is immune from the requirements of having to go onto the ground, no matter what your gig is.
Well, I think this is politics. Welcome to it. And this is, and talk about money. This is almost as much money as the Democrats burned in Virginia doing a bad idea on reapportionment. But that said, I think that Thomas Massie will have his day in court today, and we'll see the verdict. And I'm interested to see it just like everyone else.
I do think it's interesting, though, when you see the defense secretary there in a time of war, and when you look specifically at this race, how it could also be a litmus test for just how high frustration is when it comes to the war in Iran and the ramification of higher gas prices. We talk about foreign policy a lot, and the American people can be frustrated with different foreign policy decisions, but it doesn't always actually equate to being a primary factor when it comes to electoral races. Now, this could be different. My colleague was in Kentucky recently, Jenny Medina, and she did reporting there and found that a lot of people had that gas price on their mind, had the initial America First promise on their mind, not to get involved in some of these prolonged conflicts. I know the administration likes to say that this isn't a forever war, and yes, but a lot of voters in Kentucky also remember the president initially saying that this would last 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
We are past that.